Then I want to introduce Stephanie Nelson. This is actually going to be a very special presentation. She's Director of Court Services, and she has been, I don't know, I probably email her at least twice a week, if not more, on all sorts of issues. But I'm so excited to be connected back with the court. As many of you know, I wandered in the wilderness for 11 years, and now I'm back working with the court on everything. It's wonderful. Chief Justice Kennedy is just a great partner. She's part of our steering committee now. But anyhow, she put together, one of the very first things she did was put together a task force on reentry. She was very passionate about it. She really liked some of the reentry programs she saw that they were doing for veterans, and she wanted to use that as one of the models. And then she got very interested in jails with Andy, so they actually took up jails, not just prison reentry. But I understand this morning, hot off the press, that the justices just approved the final report. So you are going to get a first-hand final report from Stephanie on that. It's not going to be officially released until this afternoon or tomorrow, I believe. So embargo it until you hear the official release. But we're very excited that this group is going to hear it first. And what more perfect audience for you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Stratton. Chief Justice Kennedy convened in the Reentry Month last year of April of 2023 and started off this Reentry Task Force. And one of the things you'll hear her talk about, it's very near and dear to her heart. Before she was a judge and a lawyer, she was a member of Hamilton Police Department, and she tells the story of when she was out one cold night and a gentleman who had been in prison and was looking, for a place to sleep and was about to do something that he shouldn't. And so that really struck her. And so this has always kind of been with her throughout her career. So as Justice Stratton said, she convened the task force on reentry, and I'm happy to say that the report is being finalized right now in our public information office. And so you will, as I told Justice Stratton, I'll send it to her and she can disperse it to everyone. And in fact, this the task force on criminal justice and mental health, there is a recommendation that part of the rapid reentry release on jails goes to that to continue the work of moving it forward. So I want to just talk a little bit about the summary of recommendations. The group had pretty much every executive agency on it, and in fact there are several folks who are here today that were on it. So if you just want to raise your hand, I see Dr. Lisa Shove, I see Ronnie Burks from the Reentry Coalition, Chris Galley from Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, and Andy Lebenthal over there. And Justice Stratton is correct. We divided it into two pieces. We did a prison subcommittee, and then we also did a jail subcommittee, because we really wanted to focus, as Andy is, fond of saying, that it's 1 to 15 ratio. Folks being released from jail, 15 versus 1. And so we recognized that and really wanted to make sure that we were capturing those pieces as well. So the recommendations are split into three groups: judicial, executive, and legislative. And it's really a roadmap for the state of Ohio. And looking at the first are the judicial branch. So when you're looking at, as Justice Stratton introduced Sam Campbell, really looking at our reentry dockets. And we have 10 reentry dockets in Ohio. And this group, the task force, was chaired by Justice Krissa Hartnett, Judge Krissa Hartnett. I've elevated her, and she's in Stark County and has a reentry certified specialized docket. So she was the chair, and I know you all know Chris Nicastro, Department of Mental Health and Correction Services, and they have a lot of services that are provided to the prisons and the peer support program. So those were the chair and the vice chair. But going back to our judicial branch recommendations, so we have 10 right now in the state, and we have 254 specialized dockets, and that includes reentry, veterans, drug, mental health, the juvenile populations, human trafficking. So we are really going to focus on increasing those reentry dockets. And whether that's if you have a drug docket, which we have about 150 in Ohio, and maybe just having a track that focuses on reentry. So, you know, as Sam and I were talking back there, I think the counties that presented today are ripe for a reentry docket. And so we're going to be reaching out, and we're very impressed by all the services that you provide. So that's the first piece, really focusing on how can we increase our specialized dockets in Ohio. The second is really supporting judicial release. And how do we look at, you know, right now there is a judicial release a statute, and how those practices, how the judges look at that. And I know, you know, when we were talking in the discussion, if there's a reentry coalition in the county, and right now there's 63, and so that really helps the judge look at holistically all these services that are available. So if we can coordinate and look at that to really help support judicial release in the counties and educate. So again, when you see this report, you'll see that it's a lot of collaboration with everyone that's here: prosecutors, public defenders, Ohio Legal Help, you know, the Poverty Law Center. So this is, you know, central to how this work gets done in Ohio. And there's already a lot of really good work going on, as we've seen this morning. The next piece is really meeting those legal services needs, and how do we do that, and how do we, you know, coordinate with legal assistance programs. So these judicial recommendations are really where you'll see the Supreme Court taking the forefront. The next piece is removing housing barriers. And so there is a lot of research that shows if there is not a place to go, then there's not going to be success. So looking at these, you know, certificates for the qualification for housing. And we heard from really good groups, Fuse in Franklin County, and that are funded by Ohio, you know, Mental Health and Addiction Services, and really seeing if we can replicate those. The next issue is very important, addressing the stigma around this population. And I remember back when Monica Kagi was our specialized dockets manager, who's here in the audience now, has moved on, she would always want us to use substance use disorder language instead of addiction. So the Supreme Court is going to really focus on providing templates and packets to the local communities, and so that we can help address that stigma. And the next piece for the judicial branch is really strengthening those family and community supports. So the Supreme Court will work with, you know, Job and Family Services, DYS, DRC, looking at visitation, looking at the services that are provided to those families to strengthen them. One thing that I want to say is that before I go into the executive branch recommendations is that we have a commission on specialized dockets. So Sam Campbell, as was introduced earlier, he is going to be chairing a subcommittee on reentry implementation. So he's going to be looking at all these recommendations, and that will be really the place that will house to see, you know, what we need to do and where we go from here. So if you're interested in serving on that, please let him know, because we would love to get more community and state support. So please let him know on that. The next piece are the the executive branch recommendations. And again, we had everyone represented on this work group, and this was, as you've spoken about, linking to healthcare, how important that is to have your medication, whether it's prison or jail, to have your MAT, to have everything that you need. Really impressed by the turning on that you mentioned with the coverage with JFS. So just finding those models and replicating that. The other piece is increasing the awareness of resources. So right now there is not really a dedicated place. There is relinked.org, and so we'd really like to make that, you know, showcase that this is the place for reentry resources all over the state, so that not only, you know, you all who are doing this work can find it, but also the families and those in the reentry population. This is one place to go, and this is where we'll put all the resources. the additional, forming additional reentry coalitions. I know that you're in 63 of the 88 counties, and that's wonderful, and we really want to, continue that growth. Expand the peer support. So Ohio Moss, yes, the first in the country to have this program and the partnership that they have with DRC. So really looking at how can we help facilitate moving that forward. The governor has the expedited pardon project. So really working there to see, again, how can we facilitate that moving forward and growing, because there is a huge demand. And we heard also renewing driver's license policies. So looking at those amnesty days, working with the Department of Public Safety to look at are there anything that we can do to really facilitate so everyone might be able to start out with some lower costs there. Increasing education and employment opportunities. So we really heard from Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. There's already the Ohio Association of Community Colleges and the Ohio Penal Education Consortium. So really expanding that, that's now in 6 universities. So looking at that piece, and then also looking at the vocational training. How do we ensure that when those in prison, have a welding program, that they come out with the proper certificate, and then they can take that and they can use that. We were invited up, thank you so much, to the Marysville Correctional and saw all the programs that were there, the cosmetology, the dog training, the horticulture program, and it was, I can't even name, 10 or 12 programs. And so that was really exciting, and I think just showcased that. One of the things on that tour, I remember saying to the warden, this seems like time intensive for you to give, tours. And she said, this is how we get our community volunteers. And we have 500 community partners that help make those vocational trainings possible. So I thought that was, you're really advocating right there. So you see the results. And then finally, the last but not the least, Andy, is the enhancing the jail release. So really looking at the Jail Advisory Board and the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association Community Corrections Committee, and looking at how do we expand these reentry programs, and how do we, put on a program and education. It sounds like you're already ahead of the game and doing that. But one of the specific recommendations embedded in there is that looking at the AG's task force and the Diversion and Reentry Subcommittee and the Ohio Association of Local Reentry Coalitions to assist moving the jail rapid release program forward. So again, it harkens back to collaboration and building on what is a very solid foundation in Ohio right now. And then last but not least are the 2 legislative branch recommendations. So clean slate legislation, you've probably heard of this, and an effort to automate that process. Still leaving, some violent offenders to the petition process where it's not automated, but really looking at that. We had them present, and we brought in some legislators to look at that. There are some pieces right now in the legislature, so we'll hope that that continues. And then the last piece, as we've heard, is ensuring the identification document process. That's great. I forget which county, so forgive me, has the picture and the ID, I think it's Montgomery, and taking that to the BMV, but really looking at, they need that identification, whether it's a state ID or a driver's license, and how can we help facilitate those efforts that are already there. So I am happy to take any questions. Again, as Justice Stratton said, this is hot off the press. The Chief Justice, Sharon Kennedy, will be announcing this, and I know that it's very important to her, and it must be important to you all in the room. So please, let us know, let Sam and I know if you want to be part of the implementation or a certain group, because we're very excited about this work, and we've only just begun here. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.